Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to today's meeting of the Standards Committee, Wednesday 22nd of March at 2:30. Can I take, please, any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence from Councillor Rabaiotti.
Thank you. And do we have any disclosures, please, of any personal or prejudicial interests? None indicated. Thank you. We've got a number of minutes before us today to approve. Can I take, first of all, please, the minutes of the meeting of the Friday 20th of January. That's the 10 a.m. Can I have the show of hands, please, or any observations on the show of hands? Thank you. And then the meeting of the Standards Committee, Friday 17th of February, 10 a.m. Again, a show of hands, please. Thank you. And finally, I think it's the third set, which is the special meeting on the 2nd of March, again at 11 a.m. Those of you that were there, can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. Okay, so item 4, group leaders duty. We're due to meet with 2 councillors today. Councillor Lyndon Jones is due to join us at 2:45. So I wonder in the meantime, perhaps we can take item 5, Tracy, if you would, please.
Yes, happy to do so, Chair. So agenda item 5, page 33 of your papers, relates to the Community and Town Council training plans. So this was a piece of work that many of you will recall we started after the Standards Committee hearing that we dealt with a couple of years ago, where members raised some concerns around the level of training of community and town councillors, particularly in relation to financial training. That particular Standards Committee hearing was looking at financial training in particular. To a large extent, the piece of work that we were going to undertake, which was writing to community councils asking what their training was largely superseded by the Local Government and Elections Wales Act, which came into force on May 2021. Which required all community and town councils to make and publish a plan as to the training provision for its councillors and its staff. The first training plan was to be published by the 5th of November 2022. So we have written to all the community and town councils in Swansea asking them to whether they have training plans and if they could send us copies of their training plans, notwithstanding they should publish those training plans as well. I should add that there has been considerable guidance for both community and town councils around what their training plans should include. That guidance comes not only from Welsh Government, but is also available from One Voice Wales and the Society of Local Council Clerks. And also there are templates for community councils to adopt in terms of training, their training plans and their training templates for individual councillors as well. We have received all but one training plan, and that's for particularly good reasons. So we will chase that when I'm standing council and try and obtain a copy of the training plan as soon as we possibly can. A large number of the plans which we have received, and apologies they're not included within your papers, they were a large number of the plans, so they were quite voluminous. Some of them did contain information which may have needed to have been redacted out. So that's one of the reasons why we haven't included them within your papers. And also, just to remind you that your remit in terms of training plans is largely just to make sure that there is code of conduct training. It doesn't really extend to actually considering the training plans as a whole and comparing them for like. So I didn't feel it was strictly necessary to attach those training plans to the report. But I can circulate them separately, or they are available if you go on the individual council's website. You can see them because they are published. A lot of the training plans do reference the One Voice Wales training. The One Voice Wales training comprises something like 22, 23 modules. Included in those modules are various things such as the role of councillor, chairing committees, code of conduct, equality and diversity. But it does also include 2 modules on finance. One is a basic finance module and the second module is advanced finance for councillors. Pleased to say that a large number, if not the majority of training plans that we have received include not only a finance model for their councillors, but also an advanced finance model for their councillors to participate in. I brought this report back to the committee really to decide what you want to do with that. I think we've probably discharged what our aim was following that standards committee hearing, to make sure that community councillors do have an opportunity to undertake finance training. Probably I would anticipate that the advanced training will be offered to those councillors that sit on finance committee and possibly to the clerks. But I think we've probably discharged our duty in terms of just checking that there is appropriate training available to community councillors. It may be sensible to perhaps in 3 to 6 months just to write out again to community councils to see what sort of uptake there has been from councillors. But as I say, I'm just conscious of what our remit is in terms of the standards committee, and our remit is certainly not to go looking at the training plans and making sure they're fit for purpose. It's more around making sure that there is code of conduct training and appropriate training available for community councillors. So I've nothing further to add, Chair, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tracy. Any members have any questions for Tracy? Okay, nothing indicated. I suppose just one from me, Tracy, just to make sure I've understood what you just said. Because I'm sorry, Mark. I just saw your hand then. Go on, Mark.
No, and apologies, Mike. I was trying to raise my hand and it wasn't working. So sorry to
No, you carry on.
To get in the way. Okay. I just wondered, Tracy, if you could just expand a little on 1.7 in the report. The first bullet point, you say that there is some inconsistency in the plans. However, a large number adopt the One Voice Wales template, which you referred to. I just wondered what you meant by those inconsistencies in the plans that you've had access to.
Yes, certainly. A number of the plans were quite voluminous and very detailed. So they did follow the One Voice Wales template. They set out what the various modules were. They set out what training courses were available to their councillors. They also set out timescales. So, for example, they would have, for example, code of conduct training within the first month, finance training within the first 3 months, equality and diversity within the first 6 months, and then over the course of the year, the rest of the training. Others weren't so detailed, so they might not have timelines, but they may set out what modules were available to councillors. Some of them attached the actual templates for councillors with their name on them, saying this is the training that each individual councillor will undertake or has undertaken. So it was more focused on the individual councillors. Some of them had a couple of pages by way of introduction about why training was important to community councils. They were probably the better ones that we saw. They would set out why training is important. But yeah, there was a wide disparity. But at the end of the day, they all did set out, or the majority of them all set out in some detail what training was available to the councillors.
Thank you, Tracy. Any further questions for Tracy? Okay, none indicated. I suppose I am with you, Tracy, in the sense of I'm keen. Good afternoon, Councillor Jones. I'm keen that we don't exceed our remit as a committee. So I think that's a really valid point, and I'm particularly pleased under section 1.7 that one that Mark's just taken us to you say in bullet point 4 that all training plans included code of conduct training, and indeed went on to cover financial management. So personally, I'm quite keen to say that we don't extend our remit or exceed our remit. So with members' approval, my suggestion is that we've probably done sufficient today to discharge our responsibilities, but it's something that perhaps we would, in line with Tracy's comments, want to revisit in, say, 6 months' time, as to whether there's any further to be done. Mark, did you want to come back in?
Sorry to interject again. Yeah, I, as you were saying then, I agree. I think we should return to this. But in light of what Tracy talked about the some were very detailed plans, some perhaps missed out some things. Perhaps when we return to this, say for example in 6 months' time, perhaps there may be a role for us to perhaps suggest an ideal plan, if you like, of something of good practice that each of the community councils should adopt. That's just a thought in my head. In terms of code of conduct, I mean, I'm glad that all of the town and community councils seem to address that in their training plans. But I wondered what the committee might think about our role in observing code of conduct behaviours within town and community councils. I know that a number of other council standard committees are weighing up whether they should visit town and community councils on a sort of timetable basis, to see how business is conducted. I just wondered whether that was something that was beyond our remit, or whether it's something that in the future we might want to consider. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I will bring Tracy back in, but I think it's this fine line, isn't it, as to making sure that we discharge our responsibilities without stepping on toes and exceeding those responsibilities. Tracy, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, two things really. As to the role in suggesting an ideal plan, I think that is probably outside your remit, and that's why I've referenced the quite substantial guidance that there is already out there, particularly the One Voice Wales, and there is some Welsh Government guidance around what the training plans should entail. I don't think it's for this committee to actually go looking at the plans and saying, well, that's not quite good enough. I think the individual councils actually have to approve them as a council before they're published, so they clearly think they're satisfactory. Just in relation to the second point around actually observing community councils' behaviour in terms of code of conduct at meetings, we did used to do this actually before I became the monitoring officer. I do recall going to a number of community council meetings and observing them, sitting in the back and observing them with, I think it was the chair of this committee at the time. We don't have to do that now because a lot of these committees are hybrid, so you can actually view them online. So, you know, it may be a piece of work that we can look at going forward for the next year as to whether or not that's something that the committee might want to consider, but it might not necessarily involve actually physically attending community council meetings. It may be that you can attend them online and monitor, you know, behaviour then. That would certainly save, I think, a lot of time in terms of travelling. I do remember having to travel to community councils and sit there for quite some time. So, but we can certainly, you know, with the chair and the vice chair, it might be something we want to consider on the work plan going forward for next year.
Okay, thank you. Any other observations or questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any raised hands. So my proposal then is that we note the report, and in particular the position with the community council training plans, and that we resolve to revisit this area in 6 months' time. I'm particularly aware that the legislation is relatively recently introduced, so I think in fairness it is appropriate that we give some time for that to settle down. So I say my proposal is that we note the report and the position, but that we revisit in 6 months' time. Can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, that's item 5. Good afternoon. Councillor Lyndon Jones has joined us. For those of you that are joining remotely, Councillor Jones, you're very welcome, sir. Good afternoon. My name is Mike Lewis, and I'm the chair of this of the Standards Committee. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us today. We have received your form, thank you, and we've paid you the courtesy of reading that before you came. So thank you for that. That's saved us some time today. So there's no need for you to walk through particularly the form itself, and it may well be that members will have some questions for you later. But I just wonder, without necessarily reading through the form, is there anything particularly that you wanted to highlight to us before I ask members whether they've got any questions?
Nothing in particular. I think, I've got, and the group have good relationships with other councillors. I think you should treat people with respect. And I always find that with officers, I always make a point of it personally, and I encourage it, to thank people, be treated as you'd like to be treated yourself. And I think that is the way you should operate. And that's what I always encourage as a group.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you, Councillor. Does anybody have any questions, please, for Councillor Jones? Mark.
Diolch, Chair, and diolch, Councillor Jones, for your very comprehensive report. Just out of consistency, regarding the previous reports that we've had from the other group leaders, I asked at that time whether there was anything further you as the group leader on behalf of the group would want to see from the council in terms of training for your members. Are you satisfied with the training packages that are put in place, or is there anything additional that you feel that might need to be included in the future? I note that you're very keen to see something done about how we all interact with social media. Diolch, Tal.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think training. I think there's good training within the council. I think it's particularly good as well with scrutiny. And very often when you are part of other regional bodies, which I am, when you see the level of the way scrutiny is done at Swansea and the way the officers work as well, it is really the gold standard. And I think from that point of view, it is absolutely excellent. I think I've always encouraged the group to take part in training. And when I checked, there were 1 or 2 who hadn't done local area coordination, and I've chased those, and a number of those have actually done that now. I work very closely with my local area coordinator. On e-voting, there were 1 or 2, and I think with that, I think we've been doing it since the start of COVID. So I think I don't think in that sense, we can learn anything with that. And there was one councillor, Paxton Hood Williams, about local government finance. Well, he's been a member of the council since time began, and he's been involved with finance, but he has done the training as well. So I think that was nevertheless important. I always think with training, you can always learn something all the time. And just because you've done it before doesn't mean that you can't learn something else as well. And I think that is important. So, but I do think in Swansea, to be fair, the training packages when you become a councillor, and refresher packages as well when after when I came back again, in my case this time, were extremely good. And as I say, in comparison to other councillors, when I see what we're doing on scrutiny, we are the gold standard. And in comparison to other councils, which we must all applaud really, because that is really good. I think there is an element. Social media is new, not newish, but I use it all the time, and a lot of my colleagues on the council use it as well. But I think you need to have that respect agenda on that as well. And sometimes we, everybody, hopefully I'm always very careful. And one of the lessons I was always told, don't ever write anything late at night when you come back from the pub or something. You actually do that and think about it. And I think some people need to think about that sometimes, but that is a general comment, not for anybody in particular. But I think social media, we do need to possibly get that, a little bit of training on that, so that we're all on the same page. So.
Okay, can I ask you a couple of questions specifically around sort of the code of conduct, please? Without naming any names or specific examples, but what sort of code of conduct issues are being raised with you when you have one-to-ones with your group members? What sort of code of conduct issues are being raised?
To be honest, nothing in particular, because I think we've got a good relationship I have with other group leaders. In fact, I've just been speaking to the leader of the council about an issue on the way in, and we're going to move that forward. And I think that's good and healthy. And if anything was raised, I would raise it with them straight away. Because I'm a person, if anything happens, I would want to deal with it. But nothing in particular has been raised. We've got a good relationship with the group, within my group, very good relationship. And I'd like to think that with a lot of the councillors across the council as well. It's more difficult now because of we're doing things sometimes remotely. Whereas before you could see people at every meeting, or you might see them having a cup of tea or something and you could join in. You can't do that now as much. And I'm pleased that I knew everybody before that, because sometimes if it's just on Teams or whatever, or Zoom, you wouldn't get to know those people. But I think building relationship, I think chemistry is all in these things.
Thank you. And I suppose this question follows on from your answer in a sense, because you're right, we are working remotely more and more, aren't we? So how do you maintain adherence with the code of conduct within your group?
Well, I see my group members regularly as well. We're all, I'd like to think, decent people, and I'm very keen, because in my role in the Conservative Party, I sit nowadays, so I always think, I've been around for about 100 years, so I'm on the disciplinary committee and the parliamentary assessment board, where we look for candidates and so on. So I work within the party at that sort of level, and that is the sort of thing that I would expect and from my councillors. And when we're selecting candidates, I also expect that. Because I think it's an element of decency, and you must show that, and it must show through as well. And I really think that is important, because I'm in it to help people and not to argue with people, and I just want to get on with the job.
Okay. Any other members have any further questions for Councillor Jones? Oh, Mike Lewis, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question. It's just, can I just say that as a councillor from a different party, I have always had an excellent relationship with all members of Councillor Lyndon Jones's group, even the more eccentric one. So I commend him on his leadership of the Conservative group and his involvement with the day-to-day running of the council. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. But you know, and likewise too. And I've always enjoyed working with you as we have on a range of committees. But I think that is what I believe in, and I couldn't do anything any different. That is who I am, and the way I operate. And I'm pleased to say that actually comes across as well.
If members don't have any further questions, I think that's a very appropriate place to round up. So, Councillor Lewis, Councillor Jones, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Very good to meet you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you. We've got a couple of minutes before Councillor May joins us, so I wonder whether we could take item 6, Tracy, please.
Yes, again, happy to do so. Thank you, Chair. Page 36 is a report on gifts and hospitality. So just to remind you that the Members' Code of Conduct requires members to register any gifts or hospitalities or any benefits where the value of the item exceeds a threshold determined by council. Council in Swansea has determined that threshold to be £25. So anything over £25 has to be declared. There was a discussion some time ago as part of the Pen Review. Now, I know I brought a report to Standards Committee about that Pen Review, where Richard Penn actually did note that the threshold for declaring gifts and hospitality did vary between local authorities, and it ranged from £20 to £100. And Richard Penn did discuss in his report whether or not that threshold should be consistent across Wales. In the last few months, there has been a discussion amongst monitoring officers in Wales as to whether or not we should look at maybe voluntarily agreeing a threshold for consistency purposes rather than potentially Welsh Government looking to actually legislate on the matter. So a number of monitoring officers in Wales have already taken reports to their Standards Committee, asking whether or not their Standards Committee are in favour of some sort of standardisation. I think it's a true reflection to say that the majority, if not all, of Standards Committees are in favour of that harmonisation of the thresholds. I have attached at Appendix 1 a list of authorities, because we did do a round robin as to what our thresholds were as monitoring officers, and you can see there the vast majority of them are in line with Swansea's threshold, which is £25. So I did think I'd bring a report here just to gauge your views as to harmonisation of the threshold. I would say it is a matter for council as to what that threshold is. It is not a matter for the Standards Committee, but your views on whether or not we should look to harmonise and set a consistent threshold in Wales is something that this Standards Committee would support from the point of view of consulting with you. So again, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tracy. Any members have any questions or observations, please? Councillor Lewis, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Tracy, just one question. When was the last time the threshold of £25 was reviewed? Bearing in mind that we have got a 10% inflation rate at the moment.
I can't give you a precise date as to when it was actually reviewed. I need to look that up, but what I can say, it hasn't been reviewed for a number of years. A lot of councils have picked this up about inflation, comparing ourselves to the Senedd, for example, where they've got a higher limit. That has been discussed, but on the whole, I think it was felt that £25, it is about, declaring any gifts or hospitality you have. A number of authorities take the view, well, you should declare all gifts and hospitality. So, but I do take your point. I'll get back to you as to the precise date, Councillor Lewis. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't recall, but it's not been looked at for a number of years.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Any other observations or questions? Okay, I suppose my only question, Tracy, and it's a detailed one really, in the Appendix 1 that you attached, the Pen report seems to suggest a variation between £21 and 100 and something, but the Appendix 1, most of them, if not all of them, are £25. I couldn't see any examples, to be honest, outside the sort of thresholds that we're already talking about.
No, I picked up on that as well. I mean, as I said, that table is something that I've put together. It followed a round robin email amongst monitoring officers about what your limit is. It doesn't exactly tally with the Richard Penn up to £100. I can't remember, because I would have put it in there if any authority had come back saying our limit is £100. So I'm not quite sure where that came from. What I would say is that I think gifts and hospitality also applies to the national parks, etc. So it may have been that that £100 limit was somewhere else, and I've only included local authorities in that table.
Thanks, Tracy. Any further questions before I try to sum this up? Okay, thank you. Then, as Tracy says, we're not being asked to approve anything, but we're being consulted, aren't we? So if I said that the view of the Standards Committee is that we would support standardisation across Wales, but it is perhaps for others, and taking the point that you've just made, Councillor Mike Lewis, as to what the appropriate figure is now, whether it's 25 or something adjusted for inflation to be brought up to date. That as a principle we would support standardisation across Wales. Is that a reasonable view for the council, for the committee to take? I'm seeing all unanimous. That's sufficient for you, Tracy? Perfect. Thank you. And we have a couple of minutes spare, so I'm going to ask you quickly.
I can call him in.
I'm sorry. Yes, please, if you would. Oh, he's online, isn't he? Sorry. Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I was waiting for Councillor May to appear at the door, but I've just been reminded he's actually joining us virtually. Okay, we've invited him in, but he hasn't arrived yet. So I wonder then, Tracy, could we just use the time to move on to item 7, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So again, agenda item 7 is a report back to the committee on the breach of code of conduct complaints that have been made to the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales. They're set out on page 40. There are 2 complaints there that were made to the Ombudsman, and both complaints the Ombudsman has decided not to investigate.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. And that report is just for noting. Yes. Okay, thank you. And I don't see Councillor May with us. No. Okay, so quickly, can we do item 8 then, Tracy, please?
Yeah, and that's the work plan. I think we probably do need to pick up what we want to include on our work plan for the next year. We've discharged our duty in terms of speaking to all the group leaders, subject to speaking to Councillor May. We've dealt with most of the items that was on the work plan. Future items that have slipped somewhat, you might want to look at and Councillor Lyndon Jones has just referred to this actually, around social media guidance for councillors. So you might want to look at what training and what guidance we offered to councillors in Swansea. Also, some oversight about the whistleblowing policy. The whistleblowing policy has been slightly delayed because that is currently being reviewed. So I haven't brought the whistleblowing policy to this standards committee because I didn't see the point if it was currently being looked at with a view to amending it. And the indemnity scheme has just slipped from the cycle. So that's probably, again, something that you might want to consider going forward. Chair, I don't know how you want to deal with it, whether you want us to pick it up separately outside of this committee meeting and put together some sort of plan and then feedback to the next committee meeting.
Yes, please, Tracy. I'm slightly scared when the monitoring officer reads my mind, but yes, that is exactly what I was about to suggest, is that perhaps you and I could work on it offline and bring something back to the next meeting, if that's okay. All members happy with that we draft something, we come up with? Sorry, Mark, you were going to add?
Yes, sorry, I'm not disagreeing with you on that at all. And forgive me for bringing this up, considering this is my first sort of full-blown standards committee meeting. In terms of our future work programme, we have to present an annual report to full council. Is it sometime in the summer? So is that something that gets dealt with at our next meeting?
Yes, Councillor, what we would look to do is to draft a annual report. The annual report will then be brought back to the Standards Committee for their approval, and then that annual report will be taken to full council. And what we have done in the past is that the chair of the Standards Committee will present that report to full council. So we will look, following conclusion of the group leaders meeting, we will look to draft an annual report which will highlight all the work that the committee has undertaken during the course of the last year, but also include within that report our new duty as to how we've monitored the group leaders discharging their own duty.
It's just I didn't know whether it had to be included there in a future item, but obviously it's something that is going to be dealt with. That's fine, thanks.
Thank you, Mark. And of course, one barrier to that is meeting with Councillor May. No news, Alison? Okay. Just bear with us then, members. We're trying to contact Councillor May. Sorry to keep you waiting, members. We're just waiting for Councillor May. Ideally, I would like to meet with him today, but I'm very conscious, in fairness, it's probably around his work commitments. He may well be running late. I wonder, would you bear with us, members? If we adjourn for 5 minutes, we'll try to contact Councillor May. And where are we? It's about 7 minutes past 3 at the moment. If we come back, if I ask you to come back, say at 15:15, would that be okay? We'll adjourn the meeting for now. Thank you.